we're going to make this really quick. And how we're going to set up the header and the footer so that it appears the same across different pages. And then when we change one thing, it changes over all the pages. All right, so does anyone have any questions about the setup and how it is right now? Because I know the code wasn't publicly available. All right, cool. So just a quick recap of how we're setting it up again. We're doing this thing right here where we go into the, where we catch this path. If anyone goes to the homepage, then we render the videos template, and that goes off of here. And it looks for videos.ejs, and it's important that it's .ejs. That goes with this. And we pass this information in. And this title we have rendered right here. So it says, "Hi, Mom." So yeah, I'm just going to pull this up so we kind of have it. I don't remember the stuff I used. It looks like we're missing some of the files, but we can still get set up with the font and the spacing and stuff like that. It'll be nice as opposed to like that. Okay, so first things first, let's set up our header and footer. So what I do is I make a new folder right here inside of views called layout. And it doesn't matter what you name it as long as you remember to reference it as layout. And this is going to be the header.ejs and also the footer.ejs. And in the header, I'm going to have all of this information. Oh, I didn't realize I did that in the header. That should be in the body. That's just a better practice. And for the title, I'm just going to have code at IU. And I'm actually going to start the body inside of here as well. Oops. I guess I'll just leave it at 2 spaces for the tab. Include. So this basically copies and pastes the contents of a file. We do /layout/header.ejs, and that will copy the contents of the header. And then inside of the actual EJS file, we're going to have like the actual content of the page. And then we're going to include the footer. And this, we can do this thanks to EJS, which is our templating engine. So what kind of happens from our perspective, from the backend's perspective, is the user sends a message over here. We render this videos template. So we go over here and we look for this file, grab the header, grab the footer, and then send back the completed result. All right, so I actually got rid of the part of the videos part and the title part. So I'm just going to leave this blank. I might have to restart the backend. Whenever you change this code, you have to restart the backend. We can get around it with something called nodemon, but let's not get into that right now. Unexpected token dot in videos.js. I'm assuming that's this part. If you want to create async function, pass async true as an option. Let's see, we have 3.1.6. Ooh, now I was basing this off 2.7. All right, so this is a new version of EJS. We have to see what is wrong.
Is the difference the version number?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they changed a major version, which is 2 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of expected that things will break. Oh, it looks like they have it as a function. Let's see if you use include in this repo. Okay, it looks like it's just changed to a function syntax. Could not find the file. Where that file? I wonder where it's looking from. If we use /views. Maybe that's going to the root of the computer. Yeah, so it looks like we just need a relative path here. Okay, cool. So that's how that works. That includes just a function call now, and it's relative to, it looks like the views folder.
As long as it's in the same folder, we don't have to do like, you can just say relative.
Yeah, if it was in the same folder and we want to include it, we could have it like this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's the difference in the syntax. It's good that we figured that out. Now let's get to building this. Now there's a lot of cool things, a lot of little tips, I guess, for making a site look nice. We'll get into that later, but the first thing I want to tackle is the font. Actually, let's get this kind of like content set up first. I'd say that's probably the most important. Okay, so for the header, we're going to have a div ID as header. For you non-front-end people, divs are just divisions, and it's kind of like the main way we separate our site. And we also probably got to make a, yeah, we should make a static folder. Well, let's call it public. Ooh. So the idea behind the public folder is that, say if we wanted to get to like this, we wanted to see what's in this index.js file, you might think we'd do like /index.js, but that's not how React works, or that's not how Express works. Express works by looking at these routes and only these routes. So you're not going to be able to access your file system unless you explicitly tell React that I want to access the file system at this point. So I'm actually going to have to look up the syntax really quick. Oh, that's just really easy. So we can tell Express to look at the actual files in a folder by doing app.use express.static. .use is kind of like .get, and if you remember, .get only handles HTTP GET requests, and we could change this to POST requests. But what if we want it to handle both POST and GET requests? Well, then we could just say .use, and it'll handle every type of HTTP request sent to that that path. So we could do express.static, and it's looking for this thing, and it's called the root, and that would be the root of the static directory. So that would be public. And we're going to make a styles.css folder in there. And CSS, again, for you backend people, CSS is just for styling the front end and making it look like this with the special fonts and the line spacing and centering things and the shadows and the images, yada, yada, yada. So the CSS is going to be a big part of how making the site how it looks. For the moment, let me just make a test file with some stuff just to show you how it works. All right, so that's how we use that. Again, don't forget you need to restart your backend to make the new code work. Maybe this would be easier if we use NodeMon, but for today, I'm just going to do it this way. So we could do /test.text, and that's the contents from this test.text file right here. And you'll notice that we just had to do /test.text. We didn't have to do like /public to get into this file, because we already said that public is the root of that directory. So that's how that's going to work. And we're going to make our styles.css file there. So when we reference it in our front end, everything will work as intended. So I'm actually going to have to look that up to shoot. Yeah, okay. So for linking the CSS, that's a link tag with the rel of style sheet. And that's just saying that it's the style sheet and to treat it as a style sheet. And the href is just /styles.css. That's what we called it. That's a self-closing tag. And the cool thing about modifying EJS files on the front end is that you don't have to update them. You don't have to restart your server to see the effect. So let's do something really obvious, like background, set the background to red. Oops, and we're looking at the test file. But the background is not red. Let's try refreshing it with a clear cache. All right. Let's see what's going wrong. Oh, shoot. The includes aren't working. I wonder why that is. So you can tell the includes are not working. Just to back up, you can tell the includes aren't working because we just see this iframe. And if you look at videos, that's all it is, just the iframe. And we're missing the contents of the file from header and footer. So we must have done something wrong there. Might be this. All right, let's try the dash. In EJS, you can do a lot of different things. This is just used to execute code, so you can do like a for loop, and it'll run the for loop. The dash means whatever you write will explicitly, or whatever's inside will explicitly be written as whatever it is, as the result of the code. So let's see if that will fix it. Yep. All right. So the and just to confirm, when we look at the code for the page, it has the contents from the header.ejs file. All right, so yeah, the fix, again, was just to do this. There's a lot of different tags for EJS, but the main ones we're going to use are this, which is just used to execute code, this, which is used to display the HTML inside of there just as it is, and this is used as like, it'll evaluate the expression and then write the evaluated expression as whatever it is. So if I were like a variable, like if we had a title, this would give us the title, like printed out in HTML. This would just run that. It would be like having that in your JavaScript. It doesn't really do anything. So it like gets executed, but nothing really happens. And if I were to do title like this, I'm pretty sure the word title would be in the HTML. Okay, so that's in the header, that's in the footer, the dashes. And we have it working like that. Cool. I'm actually going to get rid of the Rick Astley video for now. Actually, we can just make this not the videos route. Let's make a new file for the home page. And then let's point to it over here. So let's render the home page instead of videos. And the home page, we're going to have an H1 that just says hello. And since we modified, remember we modified what we're rendering, we need to restart the server. And the keyboard shortcuts, by the way, is Control-C to stop, and then up and enter to re-execute. I just executed. So we should just say, yep, that looks good. Let's get rid of the red background. Oh, by the way, for people doing backend, this is a selector. So it selects the tags. The asterisk selector selects absolutely everything on the page, any selector. And these are the attributes we can modify. So we're modifying the background to be red. And then we can modify like other things like the font size to be 18 pixels or something. But we'll get into that later. So what was I thinking about? Fonts. We should do fonts later. We should do fonts a bit later, actually. Let's just get into this header. So to select an ID, So we want to select the things with an ID. We could select all divs with our CSS, and that would select every single division. But we want to just select this guy, this header. So to do that, we do a hash header. And that's how we select IDs. And the unique thing about IDs is that there's only one ID on the page. So we're only going to have one header, so that works out. Let's set the width to be 100% of the screen, and the height to be, let's say, 75 pixels. The next thing we want to have is probably the background color, which is white, and then shadow. So let's have the background be white, and box shadow. The way this particular attribute works is the X offset, the Y offset, which are both 0. The blur radius, so 5 pixels, it's going to be 5 pixels from here, and it's going to be blurred for that much. And we're going to have it be black, the color of the shadow. So I don't think we need to change anything. Yeah. That's kind of ugly because it doesn't go all the way. And you'll see this is because we have this margin. And you can tell it's margin as opposed to padding right here. Padding is green, and if you're using Chrome. Oh, if I didn't go over, by the way, if I didn't go over that, this is inspect element. Or on Mac, you can do Command Option J, or on Windows, you can do Control Shift J to get here and just hit elements. So you could tell that it's margin. So if we just change the margin to 0, this is the developer preview. So if we refresh the page, these changes are going to go away. But that looks pretty good. So I'm going to select both the HTML tag and the body tag, because maybe different browsers do it differently. I'm going to set the margin to 0 and also the padding to 0. So that's going to ensure that our page actually does span the entire width and height of the screen.
What's padding?
Padding, you could think of it as margin, I guess. The only difference is that padding is part of the element and margin is outside of the element. So if you have a border and you add padding, it's going to make the border larger. But if you add margin, it's going to add some space between the element and the next element, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Cool. So we kind of have a header there. We can get into the links, I guess, later. I don't have this image on me, unfortunately, it looks like. But I'll have it for next time. So let's get into the font. The cool thing about fonts is you can go to, I believe it's fonts.google.com. Cool. And the great thing about this is that you don't have to download any of these fonts. You'll get it from, when you, on production, you'll get it from Google servers. So I'm not sure what I used for this, but I believe I used PT Sans. Cool. So we're going to select the regular and bold style. And Google Fonts, it gives you this link that you can just copy and paste. And for anyone that didn't quite follow where I went, there it is in chat. All right, so we just selected those two styles for PT Sans. We're going to copy them and paste them. And it shows you that you can just set the font. This is how you use to set the font family and change the font. So this goes in the header, and it's going to be a link right along with our other link. This pre-connect thing is to make it run faster. Basically, it connects to fonts.gstatic.com as soon as possible, which lets us download faster. And then we have to actually set the style. We have to actually set it up. So since font attributes are actually inherited, we can just set font family here, and family. It's going to be PT sans, and just sans serif. The commas specify fallbacks. So if PT sans isn't available, say Google's down or whatever, it'll use just any sans serif font that it can find. So when we refresh, see it is rendered in a different font. So it's kind of structured the page to look like this a bit. This is a selector for the H1, the header 1. Which is this guy, and that's kind of like the main title for the whole page. Let's just set the font size to be 28 pixels and font weight to be bold. I believe it is already bold. But that was actually smaller. I did want it to be a little bit bigger. Let's just mess with this. Kind of like 40. So 40 pixels for that. And let's have the paragraph. Inspect elements is God tier. Yes. It definitely is. Let's have this paragraph. And let's just look up some lorem polar text. There we go. You know what, we can just copy this. About lorem SP21. Okay, we should probably center this stuff. A common practice that I do a lot is I create a class for the content. That way it kind of separates it from the header and the footer. Kind of makes it its own thing. So I set this class to be content box. So you could select that with dot content box. And we're just going to set the text align to center. So it's going to center all of the text and all of its child elements. We'll set center. This text looks a little bit small though. Font size 18 pixels. Yeah, I like that. Another thing is that the text gets pretty close to the edges of the screen. So we can actually modify the content box to have a width of, say, 90%. Oh, yeah. So since divs are by default their display type is block. What that means is that they take up the entire line in terms of width. So when you set the width of the element to be smaller, it's still aligned left, even though the text inside of it is center aligned. So you can fix that by setting the margin to 0 auto. And 0 is the top and bottom elements, and 0 is the top and bottom margin, and auto would be the left and the right. That's what happens when you have two elements for margin. So yeah, you can see that if you set the margin to auto, it'll automatically center it. So remember, that was just a dev display, and when we refresh, we're going to lose it all. So we got to remember what we had. We had, we set the width to 90%, and we set the margin to 0 auto. So that's the content box, and then we're going to change the font size. So I'm just going to select all of the, actually, I'm just going to put this over here as kind of like our default text style. So font size to be 18 pixels. I like that. And then, okay, so this is kind of a pro tip. This may not look like it, but it's actually kind of squished. So if you set the line height to 1.5, this actually looks way better. I mean, it feels a lot more natural on larger pages. Maybe for this like example, it's kind of like, you don't see it. But if you had like an entire site and you turned off the line height, you would definitely notice it. Line height 1.5. I believe it is EM units. Yeah. Cool. Let me actually make a couple paragraphs. Just copy the same paragraph a couple times. Cool. Guess that'll do. Let me copy it one more time. You have kind of like a scroll. Cool. This looks pretty good to me so far. I guess I'm kind of at the point where I'd have to look up the images and stuff. So I guess this is a pretty good natural stopping point for questions, if you have any. No questions? Oh, geez, I'm so dark. Can you turn on a light?
I've got a question real quick.
What was that?
I've got a question real quick.
Yeah.
So an EJS file, is that through node.js?
No. So EJS is a templating language. And there's a lot of different templating languages, and it stands for embedded JavaScript templates.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's kind of its own language, and this gets run through Express. So it's right here where we set they call it the view engine. This is the templating language. And what happens is when we use this res.render, it sends it through the view engine. So we rendered homepage, so it goes through homepage.ejs and runs these tags with EJS. So that's kind of what EJS is. I don't want to get too much into it because it can be complicated. If we have, JavaScript that we're actually writing on the front end to do different display things, and we're also having JavaScript in our templates, it might be confusing as to when it's running. So we're not going to dive too deep into that. I'm going to try to, avoid it at all costs. Why is that advantageous over simple HTML? Steven asks. So, I mean, you could see the big advantage right here, just with the includes. So if I want to change, so say I had like a huge site, like ESPN or something, a site with a lot of pages, a blog or whatever. I want my header to look the exact same on every page. And say I want to change one of the links, instead of having like an about page, I want to move that to the footer because it's taking up too much room. I'm going to have to change every single page on my site, right? If I was just using normal HTML. But since I'm using EJS, and I could just do this include right there, that's the big advantage. That's kind of why it's mandatory, I'd say, to have a templating language like OffRip anymore, especially if you're building a big site. So that's why we have a templating language, and it's going to be so it offers a form of modularization. Yeah, exactly. And also for when we're rendering batches of things, it also offers modularization there. And we might be able to see it, but maybe not. So this is a site that I have that I do use EJS for, and I have these games that I'm listing, right? And when you click on one of these games, there's going to be some more games that is recommended. This is kind of a bug. I got to fix that. But see, they're rendered the same because I use the same EJS template. And otherwise it might be a little awkward to have like the same exact code for rendering the games in the same way. And if I change how the games look, you know, I have to update that site-wide every time. So that's an error for the game. So that's why we do that. And yeah, that's the stop things, because since it's 8 o'clock, if you want to take this further, you could definitely work ahead and start with, you know, the logo and the links at the top of the screen and maybe a nice little footer. And remember, we're building this, so I'll definitely drop the images in the chat when we're done. But yeah, if you want to work ahead, you could do that and kind of show off what you've made. But yeah, that's all I wanted to cover for today. You can stop recording, whoever's recording.